I am no fan of identity politics for the most part. I think it's fair to say that sometimes identity politics can be good. The civil rights movement, in my opinion, was a good thing. But one of the big differences is they advocated for the restriction on things based on race, not for the advocacy for rules based on race. So let me clarify. It's one thing to say, hey, you can't discriminate based on race. It's another thing to say, you can. And many activists today who are identitarian on the left are advocating for policies specifically to discriminate based on race. That's regressive, and that's reactionary. Reactionary meaning that they want to return our society to the status quo, which is how things used to be. When they would say, based on your race, you can or can't do, or based on your race, you can't do something here. All right, so now they're trying to basically reenact old policies that we kind of gotten. I don't want to get off on a tangent. The point of this video is to talk about the latest identity, disabled identity. And this is crazy. So once again, you know, the pluralist, though I'm skeptical because if there was one bad story I did with them, I still want to talk about this. The title is Activist Slams Curing Genetic Diseases as a Threat to Disabled Identity. It's actually genocide. It's not. It's medicine and it's curing diseases, but this is how identity politics goes crazy. You know, it used to be you shouldn't see color. It used to be that we're all Americans. It doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. It doesn't matter what your gender is, what your religion is. We're all people, and we don't use those things to judge each other. But now you actually have, like, Don Lemon saying, no, you have to see race, and it has to be an issue. And it's like you're actively advocating for people then to discriminate based on these characteristics. Well, now people adopt other identities. Like the deaf community, for instance. They're a very proud community, and they don't, not all of them, but I actually know some deaf people, they say it's not a disability. And that curing deafness or getting an implant is actually like a violation of your community because you don't need to hear. Whereas hearing people would probably say, well, why wouldn't you want to? You know, if I lost my hearing, I'd want some kind of implant to get my hearing back. Of course I would. But people who are born in this community or without the ability to hear don't see it that way. And that's what we're seeing now. And this is where things go crazy. The story says, a prominent disabilities activist spoke against the use of genetic editing to eliminate diseases from birth because it would be tantamount to a genocide against the culture of the disabled. Alice Wong, who served on President Barack Obama's National Council on Disabilities, is the founder of the Disability Visibility Project. Good name. Seriously, it's good. Disability Visibility is nice. In a December 19th episode of Flash Forward, a podcast that considers the social repercussions of hypothetical future developments, Wong discussed the possibility of human embryo gene editing reaching a point at which certain disabilities can be treated at or before birth and thus eradicated. Curing diseases, a good thing. Curing genetic diseases, a really good thing. But a lot of people, I would say, before I get into her specific quote, there's a lot of people who oppose gene editing because they're afraid we're going to end up with like a race of ubermen, you know, like everyone's perfect in all these different ways, but it would actually homogenize the gene pool and cause problems down the line. But let's read on. We're talking about removal of diseases, she said. That's forever. That's a change, a modification that will be passed on to future generations. So that's actually genocide. It's a form of eugenics where certain lived experiences are seen as undesirable and unimaginable. Wong, who has spinal muscular atrophy, relies on machine ventilation. My life is better thanks to medical advancements, she said. But when it comes to CRISPR, the gene editing tool that has recently been used for the first time on human babies to prevent HIV transmission, Wong is worried that the ethical implications have not been fully considered. A lot of this conversation around CRISPR is about the removal of suffering and pain and disease, she said. Whenever I hear stuff like that, they're talking about me, people of my community. Right? And the children, and the brothers, and the fathers, and the mothers, and the grandparents, and the grandchildren, and the nieces, and the nephews. They're talking about humans. And they're talking about humans that they see suffer, and they're talking about things they want to solve. So it gets to me, like, we're getting to a crazy situation where the suffering is acceptable because you're suffering in a community. Why would we want that? Like, this is why I think regressive left makes the most sense. This is why I think reactionary makes the most sense. This is probably one of the best examples of a reactionary leftist. Okay, this idea of privilege, of identity based around your core community, it's more of a collectivist and left-wing kind of thing. Although this is not admittedly within the same spectrum, or I should say, it's not in the same mainstream bracket of the left. It is in the area of ableism, right? This is something that people on the left advocate for. We're getting now to the point where they would actually say we shouldn't use cures in science because it would be a violation of their identity. That's regressive. You're trying to go backwards. You're trying to prevent progress, okay? What do you call someone who tries to stop progress, right? Well, you could call them a Luddite, right? Those are people who oppose technological advancement. But it's really interesting when they're specifically saying advancements in this field, it's a bad thing, and we want to go back to when people were suffering from diseases. Anyway, her concern is with doctors having the authority to decide what's a life worth living by curing conditions which they consider to be disabilities. That, according to Wong, would constitute ableism pure and simple. There's the left-wing language. For people who want to do this to their own body, more power to you. But I do think that a preemptive alteration of genes is based on fear. Preemptive genetic alterations are based on the imagination of non-disabled people of what living with a disability feels like, she said. Rebecca Cockley, who, like Wong, served on Barack Obama's National Council on Disabilities, offered a similar perspective in a Washington Post op-ed last year. She argued that disabled people are a community unto themselves and that eliminating their conditions means erasing the potential future of their culture, she asked. Where is the line between what society perceives to be a horrible genetic mutation and someone's culture? The pushback against something that on its surface appears to be an absolute good, the eradication of disease, seems like a natural outgrowth of the exponential fragmentation of American culture into identity groups, usually defined by their suffering and sense of oppression. The anti-ableism movement has recently softly protested even the Women's March for its reliance on walking. Wow. Headache. Listen, if I could give you superpowers, would you take it? If I said I could give you the ability to fly or to lift 10 times your weight, would you say, yes, please, I would like that? Superpowers sounds great. So for people who don't have this, I'd imagine, hey, if we can grant you more abilities, why is there an aversion to it? It would seem like, at least in my opinion, as someone who is perfectly abled, that the core identity and community is a reaction to being an outgroup. Most people are not disabled. Most people are, actually, this is a funny statistic. The average amount of arms, legs, and eyes is less than 2. Because even having, one person with only one leg, then it's going to be like 1.99999, so it's always going to be a little bit less. But granted, there are some people who have 3, I suppose. But anyway, the point is, the average person is fully functioning and able for the most part. And thus, those who are disabled are an outgroup. So their identity is based on being a part of that outgroup and being their own community. So naturally, they're going to identify as, who they are and what they are as being core to them as life. And they're going to oppose curing these things by the main group. Man, it reminds me of a movie. What movie is that? What's the movie where the vampires don't want to be cured? And I'm not trying to relate. I don't know. It's going to be so offensive to bring this up, but there's a movie, Ultraviolet, I think it was, where it's like they find a cure for, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking of something else. But, basically, oh no, you know what it is? Daybreakers? Is that it? Where they find the cure for vampirism, and then they're like, no, life is good, being a vampire, we don't want to get... But then again, being a vampire means you can super strength and stuff. Unfortunately, got to drink blood. Anyway, I don't know where I'm even going. Let's carry on with the story. Tellingly, Flash Forward host Rose Eveleth couched Wong's concerns in the broader identity vernacular. You hear people talk about how the removal of certain genes can make children's lives easier. Wouldn't it be easier for a child to live a life without a disability? And perhaps that's true, she said. But there are plenty of things that are easier to live with or without. It is scientifically proven that the lives of white, straight, cis men are easier than the lives of pretty much everybody else. Oh, it's scientifically proven now. Oh, wonderful. But to suggest that we should genetically engineer babies to all be white, straight, cis men is clearly bad, right? Except that's not scientifically proven. And that's pretty insane to think so. How do you prove scientifically cultural ramifications? You don't, for the most part. But to be fair, the bonds that have developed between differently abled people are not unlike those of any community. That develops meaning and attachments around the thing that connects its members. And if CRISPR advancements do offer a disabilities-free future one day, the debate about its ethics and its cultural implications would be poorer, if not for perspectives so counterintuitive to many, like those of Wong and Cockley. I would have to just say, this seems like identity politics getting to a terrifying apex. Hopefully it's an apex, but maybe it won't end here. I understand why people want to have their community and are worried about their community not advancing, but think about what this means. These people are literally advocating that someone else maintain an affliction, a genetic disease, because it would improve their desires. This is the inherent selfishness with collectivism, in my opinion, that's rather terrifying. These people have a community. They found this community, and good for them. And I have nothing but respect for those who are able to, overcome their struggles. But to imply that someone else should suffer a disability so that they can be a part of your community, so that something you have can expand and grow, is extremely selfish and narcissistic. If someone could be born without, some kind of disability and function better than ever, why wouldn't we do that? We do many things to babies because we believe it will be better for them in the future. Why is this any different? There are certain diseases we've tried curing. And think about what they're saying. They're not talking about people who might have dwarfism. They're not talking about people who might be born without an arm and a leg. There's genetic diseases that result in the death of someone at the age of 7. They're talking about all of it. They're saying that the implications are terrifying, it could ruin your community. Yeah, do you think 7-year-olds should die of advanced aging diseases or whatever that we could have fixed? No, that's not okay. People deserve a long and healthy life. And it's up to the parents to decide what is going to be right or wrong. But this is probably the most extreme and terrifying identity politics that have emerged thus far. Unless I'm wrong, I don't know, you let me know. I got more videos coming up in a few minutes. They're on this channel. Let's talk about stuff and probably offend some people.